Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming today. And I just want to, I'm Jonas Ruta, the intermittent curator here for Woodbridge Town Library. This is a show with Henna Petrikovsky and Leah Caroline. Leah? And so I just want to introduce them and have them talk about their art a little bit. I'll ask them some questions too. But their backgrounds are very interesting. Hannah was got her BFA at Lyme Academy, Fine Arts here in Connecticut, and MFA from SUNY Purchase, which has a very good art department, I know that. And she's also adjunct professor of fine art and history at Eastern Connecticut and Willimantic. So go ahead.
Mostly there. So all the other schools
in
the past.
Well, talk about yourselves. Okay, that's the best way to do this. And Leah Caroline also is, her work are these cyanotypes. So go ahead and talk about yourselves, okay? That'd be great. Thank you. Welcome. I'm very happy to work with you guys.
That's the first, like a really big first question. But I do want to thank all of you guys for being here. It's so nice to have a show in person. There's been like so many years where we're slowly building our social skills again after COVID, and just getting together and really having those conversations is really, really nice. So thank you so much for coming. And a little bit about myself. I'm from Long Island. My parents are both immigrants. They're both European, so I have a Russian father and a French mother. I was raised Hasidic, and I still am Hasidic. I'm an Orthodox Jew. And I grew up in a home that was full of art. So my parents love art. There was art from like a flea market worth of art. So I had like an arts education sort of baked into me from a young age. And it was natural that I would make, and I found my meaning and my creativity through making from a really young age, and it's still a very, very big part of me. Now, I'm a little starved from making because I've been teaching too much, so I'm like looking at all this work and like feeling nostalgic and excited to get back into making. I was talking to you a little bit, you're tired, I'm jealous. It's just so, it also means that like I have many years to make, and I'm very excited about that. And these are from two different bodies of work. So the works that are mainly collage works on paper, the primary colors being black, blue, and red with a lot of mark making and textures. So those are works that I made in the summer of last year, not this past summer, the summer before. And I worked, it was right after the war had erupted, so Putin had invaded Ukraine, and I was right away taken back to my own like ancestral history. Both my parents had suffered through the Holocaust and also the Bolshevik revolution and the Nazi siege of St. Petersburg. So I was asking questions about the roots of violence and whether that's intrinsic. I don't have any answers, of course. But I love trying to find answers by making, by being intuitive, by getting the imagery and the vocabulary and the language through making, through layering, through telling stories to try to get at that essential question of, is there hope in the future? Could our children be our guarantors? Could they bring on a new imagined world where there's joy and there's glee and there's a creativity instead of destruction? So that was one body of work, and so these are part of that, and those are also part of that. It's hard to give a panel talk because I want to be like showing people what the work is. And then this past summer, Leah and I started collaborating. We started learning together these Kabbalistic texts. And we worked on 2 collaborations, so we kind of like passed those artworks back and forth. You can see both of those collaborations here on both sides of the wall. And I started another body of work. This is the only one from that body of work that made it to the show because a lot of it was painted and charcoal, and I wanted to keep the show unified by the material, by having the works on paper. But this whole body of work was really about preconception and the soul's journey, or a person's identity's journey through embodiment, and what that might be like through using like Kabbalistic and medieval texts. So that's, in a nutshell, what this is about for me.
You can walk around and talk about your artwork in particular if you like.
That's okay.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe
Okay.
when we talk individually.
Okay, maybe I'm gonna have some questions about individual pieces. And
Okay, I'm Leah.
Leah, thank you.
I also went to Lime Academy at different times, not at the same time as
Yeah, we missed
Santa
each
Rosa.
other.
Right, we missed each other. Would have been nice.
Mhm.
Yeah, it would have been really nice. We both live in New Haven, so that's our connection. That's how we know each other, same community. I grew up in Crown Heights in Brooklyn. I also have a Hasidic background, and sometimes it comes through in my work. You know, there's a more, you know, my identity comes through in that way, other times not. Yeah, I love what you were saying about your background with art also, and it's like bringing up my own memories of childhood and art. I lived not too far from the Brooklyn Museum. That was my own little playground, you know. My mother brought me there a lot, and you know, I have very distinct memories of some of the paintings there. A Bierstadt painting, like just sitting in front of it, in front of that landscape, and it seems so massive. Even though I visited as an adult, it's not really that large. But, you know,
what painting is that?
Bierstadt. I think he was part of the Hudson River
Yeah.
School.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's the Hudson Valley and mountains, or it might not be. It might. I don't remember.
And is that a permanent part of their permanent
Yeah.
collection?
Yeah, it's part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up. I didn't grow up, but I lived in that neighborhood, so
Okay.
I'm not recalling as much. But since
Yeah,
then,
so it's
yeah.
these mountains and valleys, and you see
I gotta
men
go
on
back and look
horses,
for it.
little
Yeah.
tiny. Yeah.
I gotta go back and look for it.
Look out for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm very grateful for this. You know, we work in our studios, and we're kind of closed and in our own worlds, and just to be able to interact with people and have them, you know, just be out in the world a little bit more. So thank you for coming. And yeah, Santa Rosa for finding this opportunity and helping put it together. We were talking about it for a while, just being able to do something. I'll talk a little bit more about our collaborations, just like some of our process. So I guess was it happening while we were learning the text? I think it was, or before and after. We did something like a while ago, and then we started again. And it was just very freeing and a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And we're both at Erector Square, so we each started a piece. You know, we each started our own pieces, and then we went to each other's studios and slipped it under the door, and then added to it, and then swapped, and then did it a few times until we felt that it was enough.
Yeah, it's great
Yeah.
to feel playful in
Yeah.
art making again. Like take some of that seriousness and just like toss it out. You know?
Yeah, and I think I can say about myself that it like pushed me to make certain decisions, use certain materials that I might not have otherwise done. You know, because I was responding to whatever Santa Rosa did, and it, you know, like, oh, this is interesting. Let me try something very different that I may have never tried before. Right? We ended up like just
Yeah.
using a lot of different techniques and materials in the works. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I did feel the freedom to like use a hot glue gun, like really just
So that's what it
materials
was?
that I would never
That's
consider.
great.
Yeah, it just felt right. You know?
Right. I started to sew into them.
Right.
You know, just doing stuff with them.
Right. I mean, we did start, so Leah started a series of works that were on mandalas. They were a sort of like Jewish mandala And those works sort of can be, two of them you could see behind, you see that smaller
The two,
mandala.
the round.
Yeah, the round
yeah,
shapes.
yeah.
And what I loved about them is that you can sort of move them in any direction and it reads differently, and there's almost
Until
like
it's framed.
until it's framed,
Yeah.
up until that point. And when I saw them, I felt very strongly. I sent her a voice note, like, we need to do something together,
Right.
because there's something about those that I'm trying to get to in my work. Something very open and cosmic and vaster than anything that I've been handling with, because my work tends to be very grounded and earthy. All the way through grad school, I was using a lot of oil paint. It was very viscous, it was thick. I was attracted to colors that were quote unquote like ugly, you know, like just layering the greens and the browns and the yellows, and since then I've been searching for clarity, for space, for whiteness, for like just paper to speak for itself, and then that sort of started our collaboration. Like it really fueled something for me.
Yeah.
And then we started talking about trying to find a space to show the work
And
together.
I'm actually glad that this space limited us, because we had to have, things had to be framed because of the hanging system. So we ended up not necessarily using recent work. I mean, I have some
Yeah.
work that's like 14 years old here, you know, like from Lime Academy. I'm looking at it now and realizing, and it's just so interesting to see it together, regardless. Like I don't know if we would have thought to do that, you know, to use my cyanotypes with her, but we had to for here, and I like how it turned out. Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about, I'm also noticing I have a little bit of a history. I have from quite a few series up, but it gives some background. So this piece right behind Fenna Rosa on the bottom, that's actually, it's okay. That is, I actually made while I was at Lime Academy in my senior year. It's when I was starting to experiment with cyanotype. I'll briefly explain what cyanotype is. It's a photographic process. So photography, you know, when you put something down on the paper that has chemicals on it, sensitive chemicals on it, and then expose it into light or sunlight, UV light. The chemicals react with the light and change color, so whatever is blocking the paper will not change into that color. With cyanotype, it turns blue. Cyanotype is contact printing, which means you put it directly onto the paper. Now, this is where I wish I had brought actual negatives and cyanotype to show you how it works. And then it develops in water. So it's a fairly simple process, which I did because I took a course on art and science, an art history course, and it fascinated me, and the connection with nature fascinated me. It was used as a way to record nature, so I wanted to do that too. I had done some writing, some nature writing, where I was writing about an aloe plant, and the aloe plant became a metaphor for myself when I was pregnant. And I forgot the aloe plant over the winter outside, which is like, how do you kill an aloe plant? Leave it outside in the winter. Otherwise, leave it in the corner of your house and it's fine for forever, right? And I was really sad when that happened, because I'd written about it. And I just saved it. I saved all of the shriveled up leaves, and I was experimenting with different media to see like what would work to try to express this. I was using different types of paint and watercolor, etc. But when hello, there's my husband and daughter just walked in.
Oh, I think I see Miriam. I think I see another one.
But somehow using this process made sense conceptually, but also visually for me. It just really worked. And I loved the freedom that it gave me. You know, I wasn't very particular about what would happen to it, because I was using literally sun and water to make it, and just letting nature take its course and do what it does. Should I wait a minute or? Okay. So that was one of my early experiments with cyanotype, and because the chemicals are liquid, I kind of mixed it with water, used it like watercolor a bit. As I was working on that and thinking about texts, I started to think about Song of Songs, which is in the Torah, the Hebrew Bible. And it's a story about, it's a love story between a man and a woman, but it's also a metaphor for God and people and mankind. And there was some text, there's a lot of commentary on it, and one of the commentary is actually a Hasidic text from chapter 5, which starts with, I've come to my garden. And it goes deeply into that concept of the world and making the world a place, you know, rectifying the world as a place for humankind and for God to be in the world. So that's when I got more explicit with the text, and if you see up there, that would be an example of where I included both my own writing from Song of Songs, a commentary, as well as the aloe pieces. And I started to bring in pregnant uteruses, early drawings from 1600s, scientific drawings, and they just worked well together. They like really look very similar to the aloe. So that's up there. Let's see, what else? What should I move on to? But up there is just, that's my original journal writing. I was experimenting with different papers, and that was a paper that kind of fell apart in the water, but I liked it, so I kept it like that. Yeah, there's a lot.
Can you tell us something about the text in the piece?
So the one over there is my own journal writing.
God.
And that's where I was writing about the aloe plant. That's what that is up there.
There's also layer text.
It's possible. I can't see it. I may have included some of the songs in there as well. If I go up, if there's Hebrew text in there, that would be Song of Songs.
Is it cut from Kabbalah or anything?
That is not. No. Well, the commentary includes, it's what's called Hasidus, and it includes Kabbalistic text, but it's not only that. It's more of a commentary on Song of Songs itself. I did a residency, and I'll talk a little bit about this piece over here.
Okay.
I did a residency at Weir Farm in Wilton, Connecticut, a number of years ago. As part of that, I collected plants, and just part of my process is wanting to record things and record the plants. And I brought a scanner with me, and I put things down on the scanner to try to, you know, just keep a record for myself. And as I was scanning it, I pressed the scan button without realizing, and I was still arranging things on it. And that happened. And I loved it. Yeah. So that became a whole new direction for me that I started to explore, you know, movement, recording things on a scanner, what can you do with a scanner, etc. Yeah. I guess I'll talk briefly about, and there are two cyanotypes over there. That was actually a collaboration with a friend of mine, Jeremy Horstman. We did an animation, and he was a sound artist. He also, the imagery is from both of us. Some of it's his drawings, some of it's my drawings. He included binary code in addition to my Hebrew text. You know, idea of creation and life and life cycles in those. So those are like two of the, I don't know what you would call them, panels, or like in an animation, like two of the
Cells.
cells, I guess you can call them cells, yeah. So that's the right way to, yeah. And I'll talk a little more about what Donna Rosa referenced, the things that I've been getting into now, most recently, which is way in the back over there, I'm sorry. I can talk about it and then you can look at it later. But those are actually, I see them as works of healing for myself. They started after an intense emotional experience that I had, and just to process it, I used a lot of collage and paint, and I was throwing things at a it was round, it was a mandala, I was just acting, I was doing it very intuitively. I didn't love it, so I scanned it, printed it out, played around in Photoshop, drew on top of it, and it became a very meditative process where I do a lot of drawing and then scanning it again, printing it again. I put, they're called Claude mirrors. They're black mirrors that were used, I think in the 1800s, as a tool for painting. So if you went outside and you had this mirror facing whatever scene it was that you wanted to paint, it would give you that, but the black would give it like an interesting, I'm not sure exactly, the type of contrast is a little different. It was a helpful aid for painting. They're fascinating objects, and I made a few. I bought lenses, rounded lenses, and painted the back black. And
That's cool.
yeah. I tried to find them online, and they're very hard to find.
Yeah, I don't
Some
know.
of the original ones are very hard to find.
I'm sure.
Yeah. They weren't always round. Sometimes they were like rectangular, but there's a slight curve to them, and they're black. That's the idea. And part of that, I was, taking photos of them outside, and then I decided to put it down on one of my mandalas and liked it and took a photo of that. And then in Photoshop, I had to, even it out to make it to fool you. And then I just kept on going, printed it, drew on top of it. In those, I was also thinking about a lot of not only the Kabbalistic texts and writings, but what are called Kabbalistic trees, which are a visual representation of some of the ideas in Kabbalah. And I don't know how to describe, I'm not great at talking about like the
We're talking about
Sfirot.
the Sephiroth?
They're the Sfirot, they're the, help me out here, how would you describe Sfirot?
Visually, it's a tree that describes all the divine attributes.
Right.
And it goes from kindness to severity.
So that, and there's like, it relates to
Human
us
beings.
and what's in us and in our souls, emotionally and intellectually as well. So it's like a reflection of godliness within us, divinity within us.
And it oddly resembles like a double helix, like a little bit.
Yeah.
It has like that structure.
Interestingly, there are actually many different kinds
True.
that were made over the years. And to me, they were just, there's a new book that came out called The Kabbalistic Tree, and they're just fascinating and gorgeous. So I redrew them, for myself, and then did image transfers to get them onto the mandalas, etc. So I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
For those who are familiar with mathematical group theory, they corresponds in a similar way to like the basic transitions that can happen, the basic actions from any given state. So like, the passage is often translated as kindness, but like as described in Kabbalah, it means expansion, and the Gevurah is really contraction. And since it's like a stepwise process for propagating complexity.
Yeah. Thank you. So, I don't know, should we open it to questions? Or?
Any other
Yeah,
questions?
audience questions?
Oh, on the cyanotype,
Yeah.
do you, the surface of the paper, do you have to coat it with something?
Yes. So you can buy the kits online,
Uh-huh.
and it's a two-part. There's chemical A and chemical B that you mix together right before you coat it.
Mm-hmm.
It's fairly simple. Like it's not, there's some a lot of photography, you need like a real dark room
Right.
to do it. This, I guess because it takes a long time to expose,
Right.
it has a long exposure time. I just, I do it in my basement.
Mhm.
As long as there's not like real UV light around,
Yeah.
I'm usually okay. And I just let it
But
dry. And
Oh, what's your longest exposure time sometimes?
so in the winter time, it's a long time.
Mhm.
Could be an hour or more.
Mhm.
In the summer, it could be 10 minutes,
I see.
I made a table at home, which now I'm thinking I should maybe make it a little differently, because that's a long process. That's a long exposure. That takes an hour and a half. And I think there are easier and better UV lights that I can buy online now to
Mhm.
make it go faster. But, yeah.
Have either of you ever worked collaboratively together? That's the thing that it seems so exciting, both the putting together the show this way,
Right.
but also that experience of working collaboratively, working back and forth.
Right.
You know.
We did it like, was it a year ago, 2 years ago? We did
Yeah,
something
it
and
didn't work.
we didn't finish it. Right. It just
Yeah,
like
it fizzled.
fizzled.
Are you asking, do we collaborate with other people, or do we
Yeah,
collaborate
had you
together?
ever had any experience previously of doing that?
Oh, in general?
Yeah.
It's a good question.
How did you come up with this? That's still amazing to me.
Yeah, it's a great question. I feel like art is very solitary. We spend a lot of time, working out our own ideas. There are many, many failed art pieces in my mind, your mind, a lot of artists' mind. And there's something a little vulnerable and reckless about sharing that process with somebody else. So for me, it was sort of like taking a dare, or like betting that I can open this up to another person. And it wasn't so natural to think of that. It was very natural once we started, because it seemed to make sense, right? It became a game. And also it forced me to think more abstractly, right? It forced me to think outside of the way that I usually make. In some ways it worked very well with the way that I make, right? Because I do a lot of layering, I do a lot of collages. My work has a lot of internal visual puns where I'm referencing my own work, referencing other artists' work, referencing things that are just like artist jokes, like different strokes that look like a brush stroke, like a lot of those kind of visual puns. So that kind of worked with the collaborative nature of this project, because I could work off something she made and kind of make fun of it, or kind of work with it. And it brings sarcasm or humor back into the process when you're working or bantering with somebody else. It's kind of like a conversation. And you don't have, you stop caring about what it's going to look like, because you can care, because you could get all preoccupied with one corner, and then the next time it comes back into your studio,
cut it
the
off.
whole thing is off,
Yeah.
right? Someone took a scissor to that, and like I think that's a good attitude, a healthy attitude to deal with my own work, working solitary, where like it's okay to cannibalize a work of art and put it into another painting, or it's okay to do something wild to a work, right? Because sometimes that kind of brings you to the next discovery. A lot of things that you were saying also was like mistakes, or like kind of scanning too early. And I have the same thing happen all the time if I do something a little outrageous and then realize it's actually not so outrageous. The very nature of art is outrageous. What are we doing, right? So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Well, both, it certainly does, both, because both the show put together, the way you interspersed your work together, and the specific pieces that you worked on together are, I think, fabulously successful.
Thank you.
So I think it's really delights me.
Yeah.
So I'll add, I've never done this type of collaboration before. There was once, I was taking a drawing class, and there was a model, and the instructor asked us to pass around our drawings. So like, everyone started a drawing, passed it on, next person continues, which was very freeing. I enjoyed that. The other type of collaboration I did was with my friend Jeremy, and that was, we had a very specific project in mind, and we were, it's almost like we had different jobs to do, you know? So it's a little different, right? Yeah, different